The alarm rang early, as it always did, pulling the single mother from the brief moments of sleep she had managed to steal the night before. She blinked at the ceiling, feeling the familiar ache in her shoulders from the constant juggling of her responsibilities. There was work, bills, her daughter's school, and the endless list of household tasks that seemed to multiply faster than she could handle. Today felt heavier than usual, though she couldn't quite explain why. She pushed herself out of bed and quietly tiptoed to her daughter's room. Her little girl was still asleep, curled under her blanket, the soft rise and fall of her chest a comforting rhythm. The mother paused for a moment, letting herself watch. She cherished these small glimpses of peace, knowing the day ahead would sweep her into a storm of deadlines, chores, and obligations. Gently she shook her daughter awake. "Come on, sleepyhead. Time to get ready," she whispered, trying to inject warmth into her voice even though she felt worn out inside. The morning routine was chaotic but familiar. Her daughter wanted extra time for breakfast, more stories, and a careful selection of clothes. Meanwhile, the mother was preparing her own things, trying to eat something while mentally running through the tasks awaiting her at work. She was a mid-level employee at a big company, always working hard but never quite feeling seen or appreciated. She often stayed late, covered for others, and carried a heavy weight of responsibility, but promotion seemed always just out of reach. As she hurriedly packed lunches and double-checked homework, her phone buzzed on the counter. It was a message from a friend asking how she was holding up. With a sigh, she picked it up and started typing a reply. Her fingers moved quickly, fueled by exhaustion and frustration. She wrote about the sleepless nights, the constant worry about bills, the fear of not doing enough for her daughter, and the stress at work. She poured her heart out in a way she hadn't for months. She meant to send it to her friend for support, but in her tired state, her thumb slipped, and the message went to someone else entirely, her boss, the billionaire CEO of the company. For a moment, she didn't notice. She had already returned her attention to helping her daughter zip up her backpack. When she finally glanced at her phone again, she froze. The message was gone from the draft, and she realized with a sinking heart that she had sent it. Her boss. She reread the words and felt a flush of panic rise in her chest. The text was raw, full of her fears, her worries, and the self-doubt she never shared at work. She imagined the stern judgment she would receive, the disappointment, or even the possibility of losing her job. The day at work began in its usual rush, but she couldn't focus. Every email, every phone call, every meeting seemed overshadowed by the impending sense of doom. She replayed the message in her mind over and over, imagining her boss reading it and thinking the worst. She tried to concentrate on her tasks, but her mind kept wandering to what the consequences might be. Each ping of her inbox made her heart race, half expecting a reply that would confirm her worst fears. Her co-workers noticed her distraction. Some offered sympathetic glances while others whispered among themselves, sensing something was off. She nodded politely, forcing a smile, but inside she was spiraling. Her work, which she normally approached with careful attention, now felt like a minefield. Each decision, each small mistake seemed magnified, and she worried that it would all be traced back to her ill-fated message. Hours dragged on. Meetings felt endless. Phone calls seemed heavier than usual. At one point, she paused at her desk, closing her eyes and taking a deep breath. She thought about her daughter and the life she wanted to provide. The bills, the rent, the little luxuries she tried to give her child, all felt like a mountain she could barely climb. She felt small in the vast machinery of the company, an unnoticed cog carrying the weight of personal struggles no one else could see. Despite her fear, she tried to push through, focusing on the work in front of her. But the accidental text lingered at the back of her mind, an uninvited shadow over every interaction. She imagined her boss reading the words she had sent, seeing not the dedicated employee but the frazzled, overwhelmed single mother she sometimes felt she was. She cringed at the thought of appearing weak or incapable in front of someone so powerful and untouchable. During lunch, she sat alone at her desk, absent-mindedly picking at her food. The office buzzed around her, co-workers chatting and laughing, but she felt isolated, trapped in a bubble of anxiety. She considered confessing to a trusted colleague, but worried it might backfire. She didn't want gossip or misinterpretation to reach the higher levels of the company. She simply had to wait, she told herself, and hope her boss didn't react harshly. In the afternoon, the unexpected happened. Her phone buzzed again. She glanced at it quickly, heart pounding, but it wasn't a message from her boss. It was a notification that her boss's assistant had requested a brief meeting with her. Her stomach dropped. She tried to keep her composure, smoothing her blouse and taking a steadying breath. The assistant was polite but firm, leading her into a small conference room where her boss would soon appear. She sat, hands folded tightly in her lap, trying to steady her racing thoughts. Minutes felt like hours. When the door finally opened, her boss entered, not with the cold formality she expected, but with a calm, almost approachable demeanor. He greeted her briefly, then gestured for her to sit. She obeyed, still tense and unsure what would come next. He didn't immediately bring up the text. Instead, he asked questions about her projects, her workload, and her experiences at the company. She answered carefully, aware that every word was being weighed. She noticed he listened intently, making occasional notes but never interrupted or criticized. Slowly, her initial fear began to shift to curiosity. He seemed genuinely interested in her perspective, her struggles, and her ideas. After discussing work matters, he leaned back slightly and smiled, a subtle warmth in his expression. He spoke of the challenges everyone faced in the company, the importance of resilience and the value of employees who truly cared about their work and their teams. His words were unexpected, thoughtful, and somehow reassuring. She found herself relaxing slightly, realizing that he wasn't the unapproachable figure she had imagined. By the end of the meeting, she was both relieved and confused. Relief that she hadn't been reprimanded, confused by the unexpected understanding he had shown. As she returned to her desk, her mind raced with possibilities. Was this a sign of empathy from someone powerful or a calculated move? She couldn't tell, but one thing was certain. Her life had just taken an unexpected turn, and she had no idea what would come next. Back at her apartment that evening, she cooked a simple dinner while her daughter played nearby. The earlier panic had given way to cautious hope. She knew that things might change, for better or worse, depending on how the next days unfolded. The accidental text, which had seemed like a disaster, now felt like a strange turning point, a moment that could lead to something entirely unexpected. She tucked her daughter into bed later, holding her close and whispering reassurances that sometimes even grown-ups felt scared and overwhelmed. Her daughter smiled sleepily, completely unaware of the storm her mother had weathered that day. The mother kissed her forehead and left the room, her mind still on the events at work and the mysterious response of her boss. That night, she lay awake, thinking about the words she had sent, the reaction she had received, and the uncertain path ahead. The accidental text had opened a door she never expected, a door that might lead to understanding, support, and perhaps even opportunities she had never imagined. She felt a mixture of fear and hope, knowing that her life was about to change in ways she could not yet see. As sleep finally came, it carried with it a sense of anticipation, the quiet knowledge that sometimes mistakes could lead to the most unexpected and profound moments of life. The next morning began like any other, with the soft glow of sunlight filtering through the apartment window. The single mother woke to the gentle breathing of her daughter, still nestled under her blankets. She felt a quiet weight in her chest, the memory of yesterday's meeting lingering. Her mind replayed her boss's calm demeanor, the way he had listened without judgment, and the unusual warmth she hadn't expected from someone so powerful. The accidental text was no longer just a source of panic. It had transformed into something she couldn't quite understand. As she prepared breakfast, her thoughts swirled. She wondered if he had really meant what he had said, or if it was a polite facade. She worried that any misstep could undo the fragile sense of hope she felt. At the same time, a small part of her was curious. What had gone through his mind when he read her message? How had he reacted to her honesty? These questions hovered unanswered as she navigated the morning chaos. Her daughter, cheerful and full of energy, distracted her from overthinking. They moved through the usual routine, brushing teeth, packing bags, and getting ready for school. Despite the lingering tension, the mother found herself smiling more genuinely than she had in weeks. There was a subtle shift inside her, a sense that perhaps life could change in unexpected ways, even from a mistake. Arriving at work, she felt the familiar hum of activity in the office. Coworkers greeted her with nods and casual conversations, but she noticed an unusual quietness in the executive wing. She couldn't tell if it was coincidence or if her accidental message had caused ripples she wasn't aware of. Her tasks awaited, and she settled into her desk, determined to focus. Yet, She couldn't ignore the growing sense of anticipation, the feeling that something significant was about to happen. Around mid-morning, she received an email from her boss's assistant. It requested a brief meeting later in the day, without specifying the reason. Her heart sank and soared at the same time. She felt a mixture of fear and excitement, unsure if this would bring trouble or opportunity. She spent the hours leading up to it working with extra diligence, making sure every document, every report, and every email reflected her best effort. The accidental text had created a strange pressure, a desire to prove herself beyond doubt. When the meeting finally began, she followed the assistant into a sleek, glass-walled conference room. The atmosphere was formal yet calm, a contrast to the storm of emotions inside her. Her boss entered moments later, his presence commanding but not intimidating. He smiled faintly, acknowledging her with a nod. The mother's nerves tightened, but she reminded herself to breathe. She had faced challenges before, and she could handle this too. He started the conversation with small talk, asking about her projects and recent assignments. She answered carefully, aware of the weight each word carried. As the discussion unfolded, she noticed he listened differently than she had expected. There was no condescension, no quick judgments, only focused attention. He asked questions that showed he genuinely wanted to understand her perspective. The mother found herself relaxing, realizing that the man she had feared might actually be curious about her life and experiences. Gradually, the conversation shifted. He mentioned that he had seen her dedication and hard work, acknowledging that being a single parent while maintaining a demanding job was not easy. She felt a surge of relief and surprise. This was not the reprimand she had feared, but recognition of her efforts. She responded honestly, sharing small details about her daily struggles, the juggling act between deadlines and parenting, and the moments of exhaustion that were often invisible to others. He listened intently, nodding occasionally, never interrupting. His eyes reflected genuine interest rather than judgment. She felt a strange comfort in his presence, as if he understood more than she had expected. For the first time in a long while, she spoke without filtering every thought, allowing herself to be vulnerable in a way she had never dared at work before. After a while, he shared something unexpected. He spoke of his own past, of challenges and setbacks that had shaped him into the person he was today. He talked about resilience, learning from mistakes, and the value of honesty and dedication. His stories were not about power or wealth, but about human struggles and perseverance. The mother listened, captivated and reassured. She realized that he saw more than just the employee in her. He saw the person, the parent, and the human being navigating a complicated life. She found herself opening up even more, discussing the little victories and small failures she experienced daily. She mentioned how she sometimes doubted herself, wondering if she was doing enough for her daughter or if she could ever achieve stability and success. He listened without interruption, his demeanor calm and thoughtful. She noticed a subtle respect in his gaze, a recognition that went beyond the professional facade he usually presented. As the meeting drew to a close, he thanked her for her honesty and for sharing her story. She felt a mixture of relief and gratitude. What had started as a potentially disastrous mistake, the accidental text, was transforming into an unexpected connection. She realized that life could take surprising turns, and sometimes vulnerability could lead to understanding and support rather than judgment. Returning to her desk, she felt lighter, almost buoyant. The office felt different somehow, less oppressive, as if a new perspective had shifted her view. She worked through the remainder of the day with renewed focus, inspired by the knowledge that her struggles were seen and her efforts appreciated. She also felt a subtle motivation to excel, not just for her daughter or herself, but because someone influential now genuinely understood her journey. After work, she picked up her daughter and returned to their small apartment. The evening was filled with the usual routines of homework, dinner and bedtime, but a quiet sense of anticipation lingered in the air. She reflected on the day, the meeting, and the unusual attention from her boss. She couldn't predict what would come next, but she sensed that something significant was unfolding, something that could change the trajectory of her life. That night, as she tucked her daughter into bed, she whispered words of encouragement and love, feeling a sense of gratitude for the little moments of peace and happiness that punctuated their busy lives. She kissed her daughter on the forehead, feeling a newfound confidence and hope. The accidental text, once a source of fear and anxiety, had unexpectedly opened a door to understanding and potential opportunity. As she lay awake, reflecting on the day's events, she thought about the strange twist of fate that had led to this moment. She realized that mistakes, honesty, and vulnerability could sometimes lead to unexpected connections and new possibilities. Her heart, once heavy with worry, now carried a cautious optimism. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she felt ready to face it with resilience, hope, and the quiet knowledge that she was not alone in her journey. The next morning brought a strange mix of anticipation and anxiety. The single mother moved through her routine with a restless energy, her mind replaying the events of the previous days. Her accidental text had unleashed a series of events that she never could have imagined, and she felt as if her life had shifted in ways she couldn't fully understand. Every small action, every glance at her phone carried a weight of expectation. She prepared breakfast for her daughter, trying to appear calm despite the flutter of nerves in her stomach. Her little girl, cheerful as ever, chatted about school projects and friends, completely unaware of the emotional turmoil her mother was experiencing. The mother smiled, laughed at a few of her daughter's jokes, and packed her lunch, but beneath the surface she felt a tension that was hard to shake. She couldn't stop thinking about what might happen today, about whether her boss would take further action, or whether his interest in her life and struggles would continue. The drive to work was unusually quiet. She replayed the moments from the meeting in her head, the calm way her boss had listened, the unexpected empathy he had shown, and the stories he had shared about his own struggles. She wondered if this interest would translate into opportunities or guidance, or if it was simply a fleeting curiosity. She tried to focus on the road ahead, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the strange connection that had begun with a simple, mistaken text. When she arrived at the office, the usual hum of activity was punctuated by an odd stillness. She sensed that something was different, though she couldn't immediately put her finger on it. Her coworkers greeted her with polite smiles, but she noticed subtle glances, small signs that perhaps they had heard about the unusual attention from her boss. She tried to ignore it, focusing on her tasks, but there was an underlying tension that made concentration difficult. Mid-morning, her phone buzzed. It was a message from her boss's assistant, requesting a visit to his office, this time longer than before. Her stomach tightened, a mix of fear and curiosity twisting inside her. She took a deep breath, reminding herself to stay composed, and made her way to the executive floor. The elevator ride felt unusually long, every passing floor heightening her sense of anticipation. When she entered his office, she was greeted with the same calm, commanding presence she had experienced before. Her boss gestured for her to sit and smiled faintly, creating a space that felt strangely welcoming for such a formal environment. She took a seat, hands folded in her lap, and waited, unsure of what to expect. He didn't waste time with small talk this time. Instead, he spoke directly, acknowledging the text she had accidentally sent and the honesty it contained. Her heart raced, but he did not scold or reprimand. Instead, he expressed a desire to understand her circumstances, to see how she balanced her responsibilities as a single mother and an employee. She felt a mix of embarrassment and relief, the vulnerability she had feared exposing now being met with empathy rather than judgment. Slowly, she began to share details about her daily life, her struggles with time, finances, and the constant pressure to provide for her daughter while excelling at work. He listened without interruption, his demeanor calm and attentive. His questions were thoughtful, aimed at understanding rather than challenging. She spoke openly, telling him about the late nights, the skipped meals, and the moments of doubt that often consumed her. For the first time in years, she felt that someone in a position of power truly cared about her well-being, not just her performance. His attention was validating, a rare acknowledgement of her efforts and sacrifices. The conversation eventually shifted to her daughter. He asked about her routines, her school, and her personality. The mother shared anecdotes, small victories and challenges, painting a picture of a young girl growing up in a household where love and resilience were constant, even if resources were limited. He seemed genuinely interested, and his questions revealed an understanding of parenting struggles she had assumed only other parents could comprehend. As the meeting continued, he shared more about his own life, revealing experiences of challenge, failure, and perseverance. He spoke of his early years, the obstacles he had faced, and the lessons learned along the way. These stories were not about wealth or power, but about human resilience and growth. She listened, captivated, realizing that he was trying to convey that obstacles, no matter how daunting, could be overcome with determination, honesty, and hard work. She felt a connection forming, one built on mutual understanding rather than hierarchy. The accidental text, once a source of panic, had opened the door to this rare moment of empathy and shared humanity. She realized that her vulnerability had been met with respect, and that perhaps the mistake she had feared would ruin her reputation had instead revealed her strength and character. The meeting concluded with her boss offering words of encouragement and subtle guidance. He did not promise immediate changes or solutions, but he acknowledged her dedication and resilience, suggesting that her efforts were noticed and valued. She left the office feeling a mixture of relief, inspiration, and cautious optimism. The fear she had carried for days had been replaced by a sense of possibility. Returning to her desk, she found herself working with renewed focus and energy. Her tasks, once burdensome, now seemed like opportunities to demonstrate her capability and commitment. She noticed the small interactions with coworkers, the brief exchanges of gratitude and acknowledgement, and felt a subtle shift in how she viewed her role within the company. She was no longer just an employee struggling to survive. She was a capable individual whose efforts had been seen by someone who truly mattered. After work, she picked up her daughter and returned to their apartment. The evening routine felt lighter, less rushed, as if the events of the day had infused her with a quiet sense of strength. She cooked a simple meal, helped with homework, and listened to her daughter's stories with genuine interest, savoring the ordinary moments that often went unnoticed. The connection she had experienced with her boss lingered in her mind, a reminder that even in the midst of chaos and mistakes, human understanding could create unexpected bridges. That night, she reflected on the events of the day while tucking her daughter into bed. She whispered encouragements, shared love, and allowed herself a moment of quiet gratitude. The accidental text, a moment of unintentional honesty, had sparked a series of events that she could never have anticipated. She realized that mistakes could lead to growth, empathy, and opportunities she had not considered. As she lay in bed, she felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of agency and possibility. The accidental text had revealed not just her struggles, but also her strength, resilience, and humanity. She drifted into sleep with a quiet hope, ready to face whatever challenges and surprises the next day might bring, knowing that life had a way of turning mistakes into unexpected moments of connection and growth. The morning sun poured through the apartment window, casting warm light across the single mother's kitchen. She moved quietly, preparing breakfast for her daughter, feeling a strange sense of anticipation. The events of the past days still echoed in her mind. The accidental text, the meetings with her boss, and the unexpected empathy he had shown. She could not stop thinking about what might come next. The unknown filled her with a mixture of nervous excitement and cautious hope. Her daughter chatted happily about school, completely unaware of the storm of emotions her mother had been navigating. The mother smiled, laughing softly at her daughter's energy and innocence. It was in these small, ordinary moments that she found strength, the grounding she needed to face the uncertainty ahead. She packed lunchboxes, brushed hair, and made sure everything was ready, all while mentally preparing herself for whatever today might bring. At work, the office felt different. There was a quiet, almost expectant energy, though she could not pinpoint why. She focused on her tasks with unusual care, meticulously checking reports and emails. Her colleagues noticed a subtle change in her demeanor. She seemed more confident, more composed, and slightly more radiant. They offered smiles and small words of encouragement, but none could guess the extraordinary events unfolding just beneath the surface of her everyday life. By mid-morning, she received a message from her boss's assistant requesting a more extended meeting. Her stomach twisted in anticipation. This time she wondered if it was about the text, about her performance, or something entirely different. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, and made her way to the executive floor. Each step felt heavier and lighter at the same time, heavy with nervousness, light with hope. Entering her boss's office, she was greeted by his calm presence. He gestured for her to sit and smiled warmly. She noticed a subtle difference in his demeanor, less formal, more personal. as if he wanted to bridge the gap between the corporate hierarchy and her human reality. He began the meeting by thanking her for the honesty she had shared in her accidental text. He explained that it had given him insight into the lives of employees he rarely saw up close, and that he valued the courage it took to be honest, even by accident. Her heart pounded. Relief and surprise battled within her, but she felt a growing sense of trust. He asked her to describe her daily routine, her challenges, and the moments of joy and frustration that defined her life as a single parent and an employee. She spoke candidly, detailing the juggling act of work deadlines, household responsibilities, and parenting. She described the long nights, the skipped meals, and the constant worry about providing for her daughter. He listened with patience, nodding occasionally, creating a safe space for her vulnerability. He then asked about her daughter, expressing genuine interest in her life, school, and personality. She shared small stories, morning routines, school projects, bedtime rituals, and he listened intently, as if he were learning from her experiences. For the first time, she realized that he was not just her boss, but a human being capable of empathy, curiosity, and understanding. The connection between them deepened, built not on professional obligations but on shared humanity. During the conversation, he shared more about his own past. He spoke of challenges, setbacks, and the lessons learned along the way. He described moments of doubt, failure, and perseverance, illustrating that resilience and honesty had shaped his journey. The stories were not about power or wealth, but about human growth, patience, and persistence. She found herself inspired, seeing parallels between his struggles and her own life. It was a rare moment of mutual recognition, a meeting of two individuals navigating the complexities of life in different ways. The discussion gradually shifted to her career aspirations and personal goals. He asked what she hoped to achieve, what motivated her, and what support she needed. She admitted fears of falling behind, doubts about her abilities, and the challenges of balancing ambition with parental responsibilities. He responded with thoughtful advice, emphasizing that strength came from acknowledging vulnerability and seeking help when needed. She realized that her honesty had not weakened her in his eyes, but had revealed her dedication and character. He then proposed subtle but significant support measures. Flexible work options, additional resources, and recognition of her contributions were discussed, all aimed at helping her succeed without sacrificing her role as a mother. She felt a deep sense of relief and gratitude. The accidental text, which had once filled her with dread, had led to understanding, support, and unexpected opportunities. She realized that sometimes mistakes could open doors that deliberate actions might never reach. After the meeting, she returned to her desk with a renewed sense of purpose. Her tasks, once burdensome, now seemed like opportunities to excel. She approached her work with renewed focus and energy, her interactions with coworkers subtly influenced by the confidence she had gained. Even small gestures, a polite smile, a brief word of encouragement, a well-organized report, carried a weight of newfound self-assurance. She began to see herself not just as an employee struggling to survive, but as a valued individual capable of making a meaningful impact. The rest of the day passed with a sense of accomplishment. Each completed task reinforced her confidence. Her colleagues noticed the change, responding with curiosity, admiration, and subtle support. She felt a growing connection to the office community, a sense that her efforts were recognized beyond the immediate influence of her boss. The experience had subtly reshaped her understanding of work, resilience, and the importance of human connection. When she returned home, she carried with her a quiet sense of triumph. She picked up her daughter and they shared a simple but joyful evening: homework, dinner, laughter, and bedtime stories. The ordinary moments of life, once overshadowed by stress and exhaustion, now felt more vibrant, more meaningful. She recognized that her perspective had shifted, influenced by the rare empathy and understanding she had experienced. As she tucked her daughter into bed, she reflected on the events of the past days. The accidental text, a small slip in the chaos of her life, had sparked a series of transformative experiences. She realized that vulnerability, honesty, and resilience could sometimes lead to unexpected support and opportunities. She whispered words of love and encouragement, feeling a quiet sense of hope for the future. Lying in bed, she considered the path ahead. The future remained uncertain, But for the first time in a long while, she felt equipped to face it with confidence and resilience. She understood that life had a way of turning mistakes into unexpected moments of connection, growth, and opportunity. As sleep came, it carried a sense of anticipation, a belief that her journey, though challenging, was filled with possibilities yet to be discovered. The following morning, the single mother woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. Her mind replayed the events of the past days, each moment etched vividly: the accidental text, the unexpected meetings with her boss, and the subtle but meaningful understanding he had shown. She felt a quiet confidence she hadn't known in years, a sense that the storm of her life was beginning to shift toward a calmer, more hopeful horizon. Her daughter, still sleepy, greeted her with a yawn and a small smile. They moved through the morning routine together, sharing laughter over little mishaps like spilled cereal or forgotten homework. The mother felt a lightness in her steps, a shift from the constant tension that had defined her mornings for so long. Even in the chaos of breakfast and getting ready for school, there was a sense of possibility, a feeling that life could bring surprises and opportunities she had never imagined. Arriving at work, she noticed subtle changes in the atmosphere. Her colleagues interacted with her differently, with small smiles, brief words of encouragement, and a warmth that had been absent before. She realized that the respect and understanding she had gained from her boss were beginning to ripple outward, affecting the workplace in ways she hadn't anticipated. This recognition wasn't about power or hierarchy. It was about human connection, about the acknowledgement of effort, resilience, and honesty. Her tasks for the day were demanding, but she approached them with energy and focus. Each email sent, each report completed, and each conversation with coworkers was carried out with a quiet confidence. She felt empowered not by fear but by a sense of purpose and validation. The accidental text, once a source of dread, had revealed her dedication, strength, and character in a way that no planned action could have achieved. Later in the morning, she received a call from her boss's assistant requesting a brief meeting. Her heart skipped a beat, but this time it wasn't panic that rushed through her. It was anticipation. She walked to the executive floor with steady steps, prepared to meet her boss again, not with fear, but with the confidence of someone who had been seen, understood, and valued. When she entered his office, he greeted her with a warm smile, the same calm presence she had come to trust. He invited her to sit and began the conversation by acknowledging her dedication and resilience. He spoke about her efforts balancing work and parenting, and how her honesty had made a strong impression. The mother listened, feeling a mixture of pride and humility. She realized that the once frightening world of corporate hierarchy could also contain empathy, understanding, and genuine human connection. The conversation gradually moved to her career and future aspirations. Her boss encouraged her to share her goals, both professional and personal, and she spoke openly about her desire to provide stability for her daughter, grow within the company, and contribute meaningfully to her team. He listened attentively, offering thoughtful guidance and advice. He emphasized that mistakes and challenges were opportunities for growth, and that honesty, resilience, and hard work were qualities that would always be recognized and valued. He then suggested practical steps to support her continued growth. Flexible working hours, additional resources for projects, and recognition of her contributions were discussed, all designed to create an environment where she could thrive professionally without compromising her role as a mother. The mother felt a deep sense of relief and gratitude. She realized that the accidental text, which had initially filled her with fear, had opened a door to understanding, support, and possibilities she had never imagined. After the meeting, she returned to her desk with a renewed sense of motivation. Her work, once a source of stress and obligation, now felt like an opportunity to showcase her skills and dedication. She approached each task with careful attention, finding satisfaction in small accomplishments and in the knowledge that her efforts were genuinely valued. Her interactions with coworkers were warmer, more confident, and infused with a quiet positivity that reflected her internal transformation. The day passed with a sense of accomplishment. Every completed task, every well-managed project, and every thoughtful interaction reinforced her confidence. She began to feel a connection to her workplace that extended beyond simple duty. It was a recognition that her contributions mattered, that her struggles had been seen, and that her dedication was appreciated. The accidental text, a simple human mistake, had become a catalyst for a deeper understanding and an unexpected affirmation of her worth. Returning home, she was greeted by her daughter's laughter and excitement. The evening was filled with ordinary routines, homework, dinner, bedtime stories, but each moment felt richer, more meaningful. She found joy in the small things, the shared smiles and the quiet victories of daily life. She realized that her perspective had shifted. The ordinary had become extraordinary, filled with the promise of hope, recognition, and possibility. As she tucked her daughter into bed, she whispered words of love, encouragement, and assurance. The events of the past week had taught her that even mistakes could lead to profound connections and life-changing opportunities. She felt grateful for the empathy and understanding shown by her boss, and for the quiet strength she had discovered within herself. Her journey as a single mother, though challenging, was marked by resilience, honesty, and an unwavering commitment to her daughter's well-being. Lying in bed that night, she reflected on the unexpected twists of fate that had brought her to this point. The accidental text, a moment of vulnerability, had transformed her life, creating opportunities for growth, understanding, and support. She understood that life's challenges were not only obstacles but also invitations to discover strength, courage, and connection. Sleep finally came, carrying a sense of peace, hope, and quiet confidence that the days ahead held promise, opportunities, and the unexpected joys of human connection. Months had passed since the accidental text had changed the single mother's life. The support from her boss had created opportunities and stability she had never imagined. Flexible work hours, recognition of her efforts, and small adjustments at the office had allowed her to manage both her career and her responsibilities at home more smoothly. Yet life still presented new challenges, each day a delicate balance between work, parenting, and personal growth. Her mornings remained busy, but now carried a quiet sense of organization and calm. She woke her daughter, helped with breakfast, and prepared both for the day ahead. The routines were familiar, but there was a sense of ease she hadn't known before. She felt empowered by the changes at work and the understanding she had received, and this confidence spilled over into her daily interactions. She could approach her tasks with purpose rather than stress, and her daughter benefited from the calm, structured environment. At work, she had taken on more responsibilities, not because of pressure, but because she felt capable. She contributed to important projects, proposed creative solutions, and found her voice in meetings. Her boss continued to be supportive, occasionally checking in to see how she was managing and offering guidance when needed. This ongoing mentorship was subtle but impactful, helping her navigate office dynamics, prioritize tasks, and maintain balance without sacrificing her well-being. Her coworkers noticed her transformation. She was more confident, articulate, and composed. Small gestures, like mentoring a junior colleague or sharing helpful insights, enhanced her relationships and built a sense of community. She realized that her efforts were being noticed not just by her boss but by the team around her. The respect and camaraderie she experienced brought a new energy to her workdays. Life at home had also improved. With better time management and support, she could spend quality moments with her daughter without the constant tension of unfinished tasks or looming deadlines. They had created little traditions, morning walks, weekend cooking sessions, and nightly story rituals that strengthened their bond. Her daughter thrived, feeling loved, secure, and supported. The mother felt a quiet pride, knowing that despite earlier struggles, she had managed to build stability and happiness. Yet new challenges continued to arise. Balancing deadlines, meetings, and unexpected work demands with parenting was still difficult. There were days when she felt exhausted, when decisions felt overwhelming, or when her energy ran low. On those days, she reminded herself of the lessons learned: honesty, resilience, and seeking help when needed. She had discovered that strength did not mean facing everything alone, and that leaning on support was a sign of wisdom, not weakness. One afternoon, her boss called her into his office for a conversation that felt more personal than professional. He wanted to discuss her growth, her career path, and her future aspirations. He asked about her goals beyond the immediate projects, encouraging her to think long-term. The conversation was enlightening. He offered mentorship and guidance on developing skills, leadership opportunities, and strategies for career advancement. She listened intently, realizing how far she had come from the fearful employee who had sent a mistaken text months earlier. She felt inspired to set higher goals for herself. Not only did she want to succeed professionally, but she also wanted to provide a strong example for her daughter, demonstrating perseverance, integrity, and ambition. Her boss's guidance helped her map a path that was challenging yet achievable, with milestones that gave structure and motivation. For the first time, she felt in control of her career trajectory, equipped with both the confidence and support to pursue her dreams. At home, she continued to nurture her daughter's growth, creativity, and curiosity. They explored new hobbies together, participated in community activities, and celebrated small achievements. The daughter's laughter, questions, and observations filled their home with joy, reinforcing the mother's sense of purpose and fulfillment. Even when work challenges arose, these moments reminded her why her efforts mattered and why resilience was essential. The accidental text, once a source of embarrassment and fear, now felt like a turning point in her life story. It had led to understanding, mentorship, and opportunities that transformed both her professional and personal life. She had learned the power of vulnerability and honesty, the importance of seeking support, and the strength that comes from persistence. Every day was still busy, sometimes stressful, but it was filled with possibility, growth, and connection. As she lay in bed one night reflecting on the journey, she felt gratitude for the unexpected twist that had brought about this transformation. She realized that life was unpredictable, full of surprises, mistakes, and moments that could change everything. What mattered was how one responded, by staying honest, resilient, and open to learning and growth. Sleep came with a sense of accomplishment and quiet hope, knowing that her future, though still uncertain in many ways, was filled with promise, support, and the remarkable potential that comes from courage and perseverance.